Morning, Jake. Thanks for making time for me today. I know you're from OVD Insurance and you are the program manager for FedEx Ground Contractors. So I was hoping we could kick off this session by you just telling me a quick bit about who you are and what your business does.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Kylie. So Olivier-VanDyk, OVD Insurance, is an independent insurance agency that's been around for 40 plus years. I am located out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We also have an office in Raleigh, North Carolina. Something that's great about our agency here is even though we have the two office locations, that doesn't limit our presence across the US. We have contractors all the way up from California to New York to Florida here. So we've really been able to create a national brand for us these last couple years. Myself personally, like many of FedEx contractors that I talk to, we certainly stumbled into this business a couple of years ago and working with some contractors in our backyard. And from there, once we discovered that we were able to find some really nice solutions for them, that allowed us to expand and grow and work with partners and influencers and people that have been able to refer us over across the US. Yeah, over the years, we've been able to grow from there.
Awesome. So as a quick overview for our audience today, can you help us understand what types of insurance do FedEx Ground Contractors need to carry?
Yeah, it's quite simple in terms of what FedEx requires from a contractual standpoint. It's also statutory. So not only do you have to purchase this to be compliant in regards to being a contractor and getting approved, but also it's state mandated. And it's broken up into two components. The first component is going to be the fleet insurance. And from a fleet standpoint, what you are required to purchase is what we call non-trucking liability. Basically, it's auto liability for your units while they're out on the road, but it's covering the liability while you're not operating under FedEx authority, meaning all FedEx ground contractors operate under the same DOT number. So FedEx is actually picking up the primary auto liability while those autos are out on the road. Anytime that a vehicle is actually out on the road and not out for delivery under FedEx authority here, there's that gap in coverage, and that's the gap that we're picking up on the non-trucking liability. So anytime it's leaving the terminals, let's say for possibly maintenance repair, something along those lines here, that's what FedEx is requiring you to purchase coverage on. The other portion of your fleet insurance, the second part of the auto, is going to be the physical damage coverage. The simplest way to look at it is like a personal auto policy at this point. If you have physical damage coverage to your unit after an accident here, that is something that could possibly be covered subject to your deductible. So we are covering those units on that fleet. So that's going to be the first portion that we're taking a look at here. In terms of a rating component standpoint, from how we view it on the insurance side here, the majority of the rating and factors that come into play is most likely going to be the value of your fleet. So obviously, if you have a larger fleet and newer units, that's going to drive up costs compared to a smaller fleet and older units that don't have as nearly high of a value. The other half, another portion of coverage that you have to purchase through FedEx here is going to be workers' compensation. So all of these employees are W-2 employees that are under your corporation's control. So any sort of work-related injury is going to fall on you, the contractor here, and that's what the workers' compensation coverage is going to protect you. At its simplest form here, the factor that goes into workers' compensation is going to be the payroll associated with your drivers, along with payroll associated with any sort of back office staff that you might have. And FedEx is unique in the sense too, where we do actually have to include contractors' payroll as well. You do have to be included as an officer to be compliant with FedEx regulations. Those are the two pieces that are required. Those are some, we can quote both of those here at OVD Insurance. Another component that is not required, you do not have to purchase it, but something we recommend and highly encourage all of our contractors to purchase here. It's part of every single proposal I put together is employment practices liability. Basically, that's protecting you, the employer, against any employee acts or allegations made against you. It can be something as simple as an hour and wage dispute to wrongful termination, improper hiring practices, sexual harassment, racial discrimination. And what's great about these policies, it's not so much that we're worried about those acts being carried out, more so allegations made against you. And that's what these policies are aiming to do, is protect you against any sort of acts or allegations, and it will pay for damages you're obligated to pay by the court, along with the court and attorney fees that are associated with that as well.
Okay. Well, let me just throw you in the deep end and ask you the question that everyone's going to ask. And it's, how can contractors improve the cost of their insurance?
So the short answer is by shopping the marketplace. The best way to improve your costs is understanding you don't have to be where you're currently at. And that's kind of a shell shock for a lot of people I talk to that have been with Marsh for forever, is understanding that they don't have to go to Marsh. So understanding that there's a market out there, and there's agents that are dedicated to the space like myself. It's best if you get yourself connected with someone that knows your industry. And so that's where I highly recommend people starting, of course. And then from there, we can obviously break it down and talk about different ways we can control the fleet, and different ways we can control the workers' compensation. From an auto standpoint, obviously your claims are going to have an impact on the rates here. So what is one way we can control, those claims costs? Well, obviously having safety programs in place, which are already regulated by FedEx anyway, having those controls in place, but also making sure you have qualified drivers. Let's talk about starting up front and making sure that you're hiring competent drivers. They might meet all the check boxes that FedEx has, but there are other different qualifications too. So making sure you have someone that has a ton of experience, and you're not looking to turn over other drivers here. So having a high turnover rate does have a direct impact on your auto claims in a lot of different ways. So just making sure they're qualified there is a recommendation of mine. Another factor here that I already talked about is fleet values. So reviewing fleet values on a regular basis. I try to make that a main point here with my contractors once a year. I think it's quite tedious, especially for larger fleets, to do that more often, but it's something we can certainly do. But reviewing those fleet values is another way to control those costs on the auto side. From a workers' compensation standpoint, there's so much more to workers' compensation than just getting a rate per 100 that most people ask me about. That's kind of a backwards way to look at it in my mind. Workers' compensation is typically the most expensive part of your insurance program. It's also the one you have the most influence over from an experience mod standpoint. So how can you control that cost from a cost containment standpoint? Do you have return to work programs in place? Do you have someone that's helping with claims management? Do you have a safety culture in place? Those are all questions I'd be asking, and those are all questions that I have answers to here at our agency.
Awesome. Those are really valuable tips. I know you've been talking to a lot of FedEx contractors in the past year. And so I'm wondering, for these new investors coming into the industry, what are some pieces of advice you might have for those new investors?
Yeah, so something I just touched on here is that safety culture. So for new investors entering the space, my honest advice here is going to be culture starts from the top down. So really setting that precedence for how you want to run your fleet, and having your actions, not just your mission statement in the handbook, actually, being a factor here makes a huge difference. And so having that in place, and actually having a presence in the day-to-days, especially up front, it is very important. I know a lot of contractors see this as a great investment opportunity, a business they want to be into for a long time, or possibly, a potential retirement plan in the next 10, 15 years for them, which is a great mindset, but also just being an active participant in the business and realizing there's more to it than just the bottom line. And again, that starts with having good culture and safety being a key component of it. Another piece of advice here is definitely going to be making sure that your agent is an advocate for you and an advisor, and in a lot of ways should be viewed as one of your business partners. Is the agent you're working with talking to you more than just about a quote, the price and the bottom line? Again, talking about ways you can improve your costs there. Are they being proactive and educational as much as possible? My goal here when I talk to new investors is being very educational and transparent in how insurance works, how to purchase it, and how they can control those costs. So if you understand how the industry works as a whole, you can be a better buyer of it, a better purchaser of it, and a better user of it. And I try to do all those things here in-house. Some questions, if I was an investor, that I would ask myself if I was talking to these agents, or even just any vendors. I mean, there's dozens of different vendors contractors have to talk to just to set up getting into the business here. And I know it's a very time-consuming process. So questions I would ask any vendor, but especially, the insurance agent that you're working with is that person responsive? Is that person trustworthy? Is that person willing to listen to the questions that I have? Are a lot of things that I'd be asking myself before I sign up with them. So those are some key components here that I would have in my back pocket in terms of what I'd look for as a new investor getting into the business.
Those are all really great points. And I know anyone watching this conversation should be able to meet you at our upcoming event, either it's virtual event or an in-person event. But in case somebody is watching this after the event and they're really wanting to connect with you, what are some ways someone can reach out to learn more?
So the easiest way to get a hold of me would be to probably just email me, jake.l@ovdinsurance.com. From there, we can set up a time. I will give you as much dedicated time as we need to talk through all your questions. But probably just getting that time set up is going to be the best way to get a hold of me and connect. Otherwise, you can certainly call me. I try to make myself as available as possible. So my number, 616-200-3176, is also a great way to get a hold of me. With being in the Eastern time zone here and having clients out in California and all over the country here, I don't really have office hours. So I try my best to just make myself as available as possible, is what I strive for. So
that's awesome. Contractors don't have office hours either. So you guys will be well matched. Well, thank you for the great conversation today. I'm looking forward to learning more at our event, and we'll talk soon.
Wonderful. I appreciate it, Kylie. Thank you.